welcome to the LoudMouth MMA Recap Show. I'm John Franklin. On this episode of the Recap Show, we discuss all the fights of UFC 247. Jones versus Reyes. I will do all this with the co-host of the show, who is among many things a panelist on Between the Links, the host of MMA Takeover, and a writer for both Sherdog and Cage Side Press. He's Keith Shillan. Keith, what's up?
What's up, brother? How you doing, man?
I'm good. So listen, typically when we intro these things, we go into a long, drawn-out preface about what was happening coming into this fight. There's so much to talk about. Let's just get into it. Keith, the story of UFC 247 was horrible judging. Everything is bigger in Texas, and that includes mistakes, as Judge Joe Solis had a hell of a night. Finding the banana peel on several fights, the main event, which we'll get into in a second, was marred with controversy, although I do have some thoughts on how maybe fights should be looked at differently. Listen, I don't know. You tell me your thoughts on all of this without somehow stealing the thunder of our individual fight discussions. Talk about this sort of abstractly, the night and the judging.
So there was 6 fights that went to a decision that was close. I think the only fight that went to a decision that really wasn't, a toss-up was the Lingo versus Zalil fight. Everything else was very, controversial, debatable. Let me say this. I don't think there was a robbery on the card. I think for the 6 fighters that I'm talking about, we'll get to all 6, I think you can make a case for them. That said, some of the judging was absolutely hideous. I mean, we're kind of jumping the gun with this, but for this Mr. Solis guy to give Trevin Giles, who had to fight off a rear naked choke for about 4 minutes of a round, to give Trevin Giles that round when he almost got finished is hideous. It's one of the worst I've ever heard of.
Yeah, and I mean it was unique, and we'll get to this when we get to our segment on from the notebook stuff with the commentators. They took a certain level of umbrage with what was being done. They kind of called some judges out in ways they hadn't prior, which I thought was interesting, and we'll get to whether or not that there was a place for that or not later. But it was an interesting night, to say the least, if you were sitting cage side and you had a scorecard in front of you. So let's get to the main event. Keith, we did all angles for this, and I believe we both had it going the distance and Jones winning a controversial decision, right? No, we did not. I had Jones finding a finish in the second. You had the third. But to tell the whole story, let me say that you were Sonic the Hedgehog on this one, telling anyone that would listen you thought there was a path for Reyes to find victory. You hedged your bets beautifully. Let's start with the decision. It was officially 48-47, 48-47, 49-46 all for Jones. How'd you score the fight?
I scored it 48-47 for Reyes. I gave Reyes the first 3 rounds. I gave Jones the last 2.
I scored the fight 50-45 Jones, but to be honest, I was talking to a commissioner the whole time, so you can't trust my card.
Oh, nice job, man. Very clever. Good job.
No, honestly, listen, I gave the 3rd, 4th, and 5th to Jones, so I had him winning, but I'm the narrative guy. And honestly, I wasn't ready for there to be a new champ at 205, so I was going to give the close ones to Jones because I thought he was pressing the action. And listen, we're going to get into this and not for nothing about I'm not a be the man. You got to beat the man. I'm not a you got to take the championship from a guy type of dude necessarily, but I will say this. There is an argument to be made, and we've had this conversation before, that when a title fight happens, when you come to the octagon, the belt is figuratively just suspended over the octagon, and both fighters are now challengers in a way. I do believe that. So, but I will tell you my tweak to that. All right. Let's talk scoring fights because there were some questionable cards. So let's see, we talked about how you scored it. Let's talk about the rules of the octagon and how they pertain to this discussion. Because, again, I want to get into this fight, but you know what? Let's scratch that. Let's talk about the fight. Obviously, we were all surprised by a lot of things from Dominic Reyes. We were surprised by his effectiveness in the first and second rounds. Some would say also the third. Some would say not. Some would say Jones was good in the second. Some would say not. But no matter what, Dominic Reyes did not look like a one-trick pony. He did not look like a guy that just had a left hand. He showed some fantastic takedown defense, especially late. He showed a great engine although I would argue fourth and fifth, kind of where that was at. What do you think? Let's talk about Reyes' performance, because I don't want to take away from it, and then we'll get to Jones' performance.
Reyes was perfect for 3 rounds, as perfect as you can be against John Jones. I gave him the first 3 rounds. We talked about it in all angles that there's a path for him, and we talked about the athlete thing that, I said that I believe it was interpreted wrong. That not that he's saying he has the best credentials, but that he's, when we think of an athlete, he checks all the boxes: long, lengthy, powerful, fast, accurate, explosive, elusive, whatever characteristic you want to give to an athlete. Reyes is all of them. And it's been a long time since John Jones has faced someone like that. And Reyes, one thing we said was, if he's going to win this fight, he has to take the fight to John. He can't start off slow. He can't let John set his traps. He's got to come out firing. And that's exactly what he did. He came out guns blazing. He even did like a fake glove touch to a left hand to start off the action. So he wasn't intimidated by Jones. He came out. He was firing. Jones answered with, like, the very first exchange. He blasts Jones with a left hand, and Jones responds with an oblique kick. And then Reyes didn't say, "Oh my God, if I get hit with those, I might break my leg or I might get serious damage." He just stepped through him and was connecting. I love how he made Jones kind of chase him, but then beat him to the punches. Like, he'd chase him, stop, plant, unload a combination. It was absolutely fantastic performance. But what's sad is he doesn't get that life-changing moment. If they read, split decision him, he's going to be on Conan O'Brien this week. He's going to get an interview on SportsCenter. He's going to be the guy that everybody wants to talk to after the fight. He's leading the show on Ariel Helwani. He's the man. He's the guy that's the center of all our pound-for-pound debates. Where does he go now in the pound-for-pound rankings? And he doesn't have that moment. And to me, that's a shame.
Here's what I missed in the whole athlete discussion, and I will completely take the heat for this, is that it's not so much that Dominic Reyes was this supreme athlete that John Jones had never faced, and, that he's this supreme outside the octagon athlete. I think what I missed is that in the past, if all else failed, John Jones could out-athlete everyone he fought, and he could not do that to Dominic Reyes, and that's why it became relevant, and that's what we saw in this fight. The other thing I'll take my hat off to Dominic Reyes about is, even when he was tired, he stuck to the game plan. He wasn't as effective with it, which is why he, on all scorecards, lost the fourth and fifth. But he was still moving. He was still planning. Now, the combinations turned into, one wild shot, hoping that he found a chin in the later rounds. But he was still moving. Mm-hmm. So, although Jones had better cardio, and although Jones was the fresher fighter in the fourth and fifth, at least Reyes was committed to not allowing his lack of cardio in those rounds stop him from doing what had been effective in the first 3. So yeah. I will give him that. It did look, if you had him ahead, you could have misinterpreted what he was doing late to running or having John's not running, but I'm saying, kind of cruising to a victory. Yeah. Except for the fact that it was consistent to what he did early. So if you looked at the body of work, the totality of the fight, then So what about Jones? Did you feel like he was off, or do you think that it was because of Reyes, or what?
Well, let me. I want to say one thing about Reyes before I move on to John Jones. The other thing I wonder is, he said he believed he was up 3 rounds to nothing. I wonder if the last 2 rounds was a little bit pace myself, make sure I don't get completely gassed out, and so Jones in the 5th round can take me out and then I blow it. Like, I wonder how much he thought he had a lead, and he's kind of running out the clock. That's why some argue there should be open scoring. So the fighter who's winning knows, the fighter who's losing doesn't. It's Max Holloway mentioned it on Twitter that it's like the only sport that doesn't have open scoring. I mean, that and boxing. Everyone else, what the score. The San Francisco 49ers knew they were ahead on the Kansas City Chiefs. So John, it wasn't a bad performance by John Jones. I just want to say that right now. If he loses to Dominic Reyes 3 rounds to 2, like I believe he should have, he still won 2 rounds against a really good elite fighter. to me, being that, as you mentioned, that he didn't have the athletic advantage, when was the last time John didn't have the athletic advantage? Honestly, maybe Thiago Santos, the fight right before. That's why he struggled the last 2 fights, or he hasn't looked like the killer we've seen. But also, there's a new generation of fighters coming in. They're different. They're more explosive. They're more active. They've kind of, even the guys, like your Rashad Evans and your Alexander Gustafsson, they were kind of still in the early portion of really learning MMA training, where now we've have years of establishing. We know what works. That guys like Dominic Reyes and coming right in, they're learning at an established brand of how it works. That's who John Jones is facing now. I really do believe his strategy was to work Reyes to get him tired, to basically have those 4th and 5th rounds. I just think he may have thought that Reyes would gas out earlier, like maybe midway through the 2nd or early 3rd, and then he would really put those rounds away and have a big lead and maybe even get a late stoppage. When that didn't happen, I think Johns was in trouble. And another thing is, I think he thought his wrestling would be more effective than it was.
Especially late.
Yeah, even when he got the takedowns, Reyes popped right back up to his feet, and John couldn't keep him down. And that's the thing that probably most surprised me overall, that makes me really believe in Reyes right now, is that when he got taken down by other guys, he was able to get up. They were lower level wrestlers, guys like OSP and Volkanovski, guys who are not known for wrestling. To get up on a guy who was a national champion, a junior college national champion wrestler, that's really, really impressive.
Yeah, and guys, I want to bring something up just to kind of clarify kind of what Max Holloway said and what Keith alluded to, is that, the idea of there not being open scoring in other sports, obviously you're sitting here going, well, how could there be close scoring in another sport? Because, somebody's crossing the plate, somebody's going through in the end zone. Let me just offer this to you so that you can understand where that would come from. Imagine you're watching a football game and you got points for how hard you tackled someone, or how great a catch was, or how good a throw was. And that was not made aware of until the end. You really wouldn't truly know if you were winning or not based on that. And MMA is a subjective sport. Somebody catches it, throws a punch and it lands. The person looking at that punch gets to determine, is it more impressive that Dominic Reyes hit John Jones or that John Jones took it? Is it more impressive that John Jones took Dominic Reyes down or they got right back up? That's a subjective decision. That's not something that, there's a tangible thing that Dominic Reyes takes. And this is kind of, we're transitioning into a conversation about the rules, but there's nothing that says John Jones take Dominic Reyes down. If he holds him down for 5 seconds, it's worth this much. If he holds him down for 10 seconds, it's worth this much. And at the end of all that, if you stack all those things together, they are equivalent to 11 jabs or 12. Or there's no equivalency. It's not a scale that's even. So let's talk about that. All right, because here's a conversation that I had earlier, and it's probably a conversation on Twitter that I lost, but I just want to talk about it because here's the rules of the octagon. 3 judges score the bout. Each fight is only one. Is a 5-minute round. Winner gets 10 points. His opponent 9 or less, based on effective striking, grappling, aggression, and octagon control. All right, so the way that I perceive that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that we start with effective striking. In the absence of effective striking, we move to grappling. In the absence of grappling, we move to aggression. In the absence of aggression, we move to octagon control. Meaning, if this is a fight like Francis Ngannou and Derek Lewis, and someone has to win a round, if there were no striking, if there were no grappling, if there were no, which I doubt there'd be no aggression, and there's no octagon control, the last two being who is the person that's pushing the fight, right? 1, do you agree with that? And 2, do you think any of that comes into play in this fight?
Well, I don't believe it goes effective striking, then effective grappling. I think they kind of go together.
Because you have a choice.
Yeah. And then it's like aggression and octagon control coming as like the next tier down. Let's do this. Let's go through it. Who was the more effective striker, John Jones or Dominic Reyes?
Well, through the entire fight, Reyes. He outstruck him.
I agree. Who was the more effective grappler? Was there? I mean, was John Jones effective with his grappling? I mean, do we count his takedown as being effective?
That I think is where these fights get interesting. And we've had this conversation before in other fights, which is a takedown, what constitutes taking someone down and being effective?
I think
that's subjective.
Yeah, I think you got to land some punches, pass to a dominant position, set up submissions. That's what I view as effective grappling, not taking it down your opponent for 1 second and they get right back up. I mean, does that score points in a wrestling match? Yeah, that would be in folk style high school or college style wrestling. That would be 2-point takedown, 1-point escape. So yeah, that's effective. But in the purpose of MMA, no, it's not effective.
So then let's push this conversation out a little bit further. All right. So if Dominic Reyes is fighting off takedowns and he is not striking, is John Jones then at least doing one of these three?
Yes.
Controlling the grappling, being aggressive, or controlling the octagon? I
think he's being aggressive. If one guy is going for takedowns and the other guy is just blocking takedowns, but he's not connecting with punches, yeah, I'm gonna give that to the fighter going for the takedowns.
So then that's where this gets interesting, is that when guys turn it off, and we'll get to this more in the Derek Lewis Latifi fight, but when one guy has turned his offense off and become strictly a defensive fighter based on the rules of the octagon, does that mean that he is how good of a defensive fighter do you have to be to still be scoring points based on octagon rules?
I don't think you do score points. I always hate when people talk about, well, look how many takedowns that guy defended. Well, if I throw 10 punches at you and you block all of them or you slip your head and miss, no one ever says, wow, do you see how many punches he missed? He should get points for that. That's effective striking. No, I mean, it's not offense. You don't get points. I mean, it's like a football game. You don't get points for defense.
Okay, I'm with you.
So I don't, when someone stops a takedown, I don't give them anything. I go, oh, that's good. I mean, I give them credit in the sense that you're going to wear that guy down by stopping his takedowns. But at the end of the fight, no one does anything, and one guy shoots 5 takedowns, the other guy blocks 5 takedowns, and I have to pick a winner, I'm probably going to give it to the guy shooting the takedowns.
All right, so I'm with you, and this conversation is going to continue because other fights had similar themes. So we'll get more into this. I want to move on a little bit, and I want to bring GSP into this conversation. And here's why. Because I work GSP into a conversation anytime I can. But also, listen, he's one of the best fighters, if not the best fighter of all time. And I believe the reason is his timing. All right, now let's talk about his timing in the cage. Let's also talk about his timing outside the cage. When he fought Johnny Hendricks, that night he realized one very important thing. The division has caught me.
Yeah.
Either the division has caught me or Johnny Hendricks has caught me. For now, I just know Johnny Hendricks has caught me. Yeah. So maybe it might be time to step away. Yeah. Right? Here's my question based on this fight. Has the division caught John Jones or has Dominic Reyes caught John Jones?
I am going to say Dominic Reyes caught John Jones. Now, while a lot of people would say, well, he just lost the scorecard to Thiago Santos, which is pretty crazy if you think about it, that Thiago Santos actually won a scorecard against John Jones, but Dominic Reyes did it. That's pretty funny. I think that uber athlete is what's going to be a problem for John Jones.
As he ages.
Yes, as he ages. That's the other thing. So I think it's a little – I kind of feel like what happened today was a little bit of crossing paths. One guy's going down the hill, the other guy's going up the hill, and they kind of meet at that same point. That's what we have. A year from now, Dominic Reyes might be past him now.
And it's interesting because let's use one of Dominic Reyes' heroes as the example here, Kobe Bryant. When he played Michael Jordan late in his career, Jordan was a better basketball player because Kobe was young and Jordan was older. But if the game became about athleticism, Jordan could no longer match the athleticism. He was a better player. He could back him down, and he had all the tricks, and he was probably a better shooter at that point. But if the game became about athleticism, and that was where it took place, Kobe would win the exchanges. Same thing here. You know, it was interesting. When John came into the cage, I didn't see his typical, like, he's starting to have the old man game now, you know, where it's like he's aging. He sometimes rocks just a mustache. He just looks like, he kind of reminds me, it's funny, in his look, he reminds me of Dave Chappelle just in the way he looks. And there's a time when you saw like young Dave Chappelle who was on doing stand-up and he's full of energy and running across the stage. And there's Dave Chappelle now that sits on a stool and smokes a cigarette and is wise. I feel like John Jones is moving into that latter part of his career where if we're going to stomp the gas, I might not have as much under the hood as I used to, and it's becoming a problem. So my question for you is the answer here, because all the people, and we're gonna book the co-main and main events later like we always do, but those that think that Dominic Reyes is going to get an immediate rematch, I'll simply point to Alexander Gustafsson to tell you to pump the brakes. That took years. Now, there's a lot of reasons why that took years, but no one had fought John Jones better than Alexander Gustafsson, and you could maybe even include Dominic Reyes' fight and still say no one fought John Jones as good as Alexander Gustafsson in that first fight. It's close. My point is that, you know, I don't think that this immediate rematch that people think is coming is necessarily coming. So my point is this. If you're John Jones, what's next? I mean, because if it's me, I don't know if I want to stay at 205 pounds, man. The barbarians are at the gate. So what do you think? Never mind booking it. Just talk about it from 30,000 feet. If you're John Jones and you're at a crossroads here, and to the left is the light heavyweight division, to the right is the heavyweight division, or something else, what do you do?
So I want to give an analogy of what you talked about, like the Kobe, Michael Jordan. I think a good one in MMA was actually when Matt Hughes and George St. Pierre fought the first time. George St. Pierre wasn't ready for that test. And then they fought a couple of years later, and it was George St. Pierre was just on a way different level than Matt Hughes was ready for.
And I'll give you another one. I don't think this person's going to be what the other guy is legendarily, but the night Cody Garbrandt fought Dominic Cruz, Cody Garbrandt was taking it to a gear that Dominic Cruz was not capable of for whatever reason, age, injuries. Now, is Cody Garbrandt going to end up being remembered as fondly as Dominic Cruz? Absolutely not. But on that night, Dominic Cruz did not have what Cody Garbrandt had.
Yeah, and Dominic Reyes is not going to be thought of the same way as John Jones. I mean, John Jones. At this point, at Dominic Reyes' age right now, John Jones was the champion for about 6 years. You know what I mean? He had his first title run already done. The one reason why Gustafsson didn't get the shot, if you remember, they already announced Glover Teixeira was going to fight the winner. He was actually there. I don't know if you remember. He actually was there. I think they had him by the cage, get a quick interview. So that's one of the reasons. And then obviously John Jones got all his legal trouble and hitting women with his cars, and Gustafsson got knocked out by Anthony Rumble Johnson, and then DC won the belt. So there's a lot of other factors. One thing I want to say is if John Jones and Dominic Reyes do fight again, I'm taking Dominic Reyes. I was on the fence, almost took him this time. I chickened out. I'm taking him. That says, well, I expect Dominic Reyes to get better in the next year. It is something I said in between the links when they announced the Dominic Reyes fight. I'm like, I like Dominic Reyes' chances, but I would like his chances a year from now even more. That's the one thing I said, based on Jones declining and him just getting deeper in his prime. Just because how close this fight was, we can't just assume that Dominic Reyes automatically wins the rematch, because Jones is crafty enough to find a way to get a thing done. That's what we talked about on All England. We talked about how crafty, that he might be the best thinker in history, that he could come up with the perfect game plan. So I just want to, we get a lot of passing the baton moments, and the guy holding on to the baton's not ready to let it go.
Well, two other things that I don't know who I'm about to steal this from, but I'm stealing it from someone, which is to say that someone said John Jones thrives on data. And now he has 5 rounds of data on Dominic Reyes against him, not just Dominic. Now, and listen, we talked about this on all angles. 38 minutes of ring time for Dominic Reyes. He almost doubled that against Jones with 25 minutes. So now if you're John Jones, you have a lot more to go on than just these first round knockouts and all that kind of stuff that Dominic Reyes was putting together. That's number one. Number two, John Jones always does better in rematches.
Yeah.
took Gustafson out faster, took DC out faster.
Yeah. The other thing I'd say, so if I'm John Jones, not playing matchmaker, but I'm John Jones, this is what I'm doing. I'm facing the winner of Corey Anderson versus Jan Blachowicz. Because then you really kind of clean up the division. That's both a very winnable fight to me. I think that's, without digging deep into tape study, and I could change my mind, but just the broad sense of looking at that fight, I feel very good about John Jones' chances of beating either guy. Then I go up and I face the heavyweight, whoever the heavyweight champ, whether it be Daniel Cormier or Steve Miocic. I believe that Dominic Reyes right now is a bigger threat to beat John Jones than Steve Miocic. And I know that would be, a lot of people think that's crazy, but styles make fight, and I think Reyes has the style that could beat John Jones. Now, obviously, people will listen and be like, "Oh, Jesus, say now." I asked you what's fight. I was saying this on all angles. I said it on the Sherdog Roundtable. I did a SN radio show, and the guy was talking about John Jones being almost a 5-1 favorite, and I said this should be close to a pickup. I said I'm about 60-40 on Jones. And the guy was like, "What?" It was like going crazy. I'm like, he's right at the right moment. And I know you still to me that you were saying that Reyes had a really good shot to win.
Yeah.
I take what I believe is an easy paycheck against Corey Anderson, Jan Blachowicz. Then I run off the heavyweight and I give the division to Reyes.
Here's the thing. Only John Jones knows how easy these paychecks are anymore, because we can see his flaws and guys that are catching up to him. I do not think that Corey Anderson or Jan Blachowicz are the fighter that Dominic Reyes is. But with that being said, if I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose to the biggest name I can at this point. If I'm John Jones, I'd go after the Stipe fight and just hope that I have the advantages there.
Yeah.
And hope that maybe, that all things being equal with Reyes and Miocic power-wise, obviously Miocic is a heavyweight, but that maybe I could get Miocic tired in a way that I couldn't get Reyes tired. I don't know.
Let me ask you a question. What fight do you think John Jones was his best? Like, this is the absolute peak. This is the best John Jones ever.
The best John Jones ever was against – man, that's a tough one.
I mean, it's hard because you're picking it's like, do
you go early Jones because he was how impressive he was against Shogun, or do you go late Jones because of how impressive he was against DC?
Tough.
Yeah, probably one of the DC fights. And then again, the whole PED thing is swirling around in my head.
I'm going to go with the first DC fight.
That's what I was going to go with too, because the second was a no contest.
I'm going to say something that's probably going to really make people think I'm crazy. I think Dominic Reyes gives that John Jones a really good fight. Like, I think Dominic Reyes is a threat against that John Jones. Not even the John Jones we have now, the slower, more methodical John Jones. I just think stylistically, Dominic Reyes. I'm saying the Dominic Reyes right now. I just think he's a tough stylistic matchup for John Jones.
I don't want to step on my not for nothing, but listen, I'm gonna give John Jones a piece of advice, which may lead to Corey Anderson and may lead to Stephen Miocic. Not that he needs my advice, but one thing that I will say that we brought up GSP earlier, and Connor, GSP, some of these guys know this, and this really to me is the biggest secret in fighting. In boxing, it's a little bit different. In MMA, I only got to give you one shot. That's it. And if you get close, then I'm sorry for you. But, and guys like GSP were very good at knowing, all right, this guy took me the limit. I don't need to see him again. I proved what I need to prove against him. It's time to move on. Connor does the same thing. Connor only will take rematches that benefit him, that he feels like he has an advantage or he got something from the initial fight. So I think John Jones, like, for me, man, it's Anderson, Miocic, Adesanya, out.
Yeah, I agree. I run away from Dominic Reyes. I stay away from him.
I would never fight Dominic Reyes again. And
I defend against Corey Anderson. I go up to heavyweight. I vacate the title. If they ask me about Dominic Reyes, I always kind of sprinkle a little bit, like the fight might happen, but more like, I'm more interested in heavyweight. Maybe it'll kind of happen down the road. And then slowly you retire before that fight happens.
Because here's what could happen that would benefit you. Something like Johnny Hendricks falling off a cliff professionally, And then now when we look at GSP's career, we look at it like an anomaly that night, or GSP had a bad night, as opposed to he should have lost and then ducked him.
Yeah.
He avoided Hendricks long enough that Hendricks then, kind of had a bad run. So the same thing happens to Dominic Reyes. Let's say John Jones avoids him and he loses to whoever.
Yeah.
Now it's like he doesn't even deserve the fight anymore.
That's
and
right.
that could really, listen, I think that Reyes is at the top of the food chain, but the idea that he could lose to someone like Gustafsson, Gustafsson hung it up, he talked about coming back. The idea that he could lose on one of those nights, listen, they say about why it's so hard to repeat as champion in basketball or football is that you're the game everyone circles on their calendar, right? So you get everybody's best shot.
Yeah.
Dominic Reyes may never fight as good again as he fought last night.
Yeah, that's right.
John Jones has been doing this for years, right? So for John Jones to get up for Dominic Reyes is different than Dominic Reyes getting up for John Jones. So, yeah, I avoid Dominic Reyes. I say, okay, this guy's trouble, and I won. And if people want to try and get us back together, that's on them. But I have other things to do.
Yeah,
he has other places he can go.
Yeah, this season, Lamar Jackson was circling Tom Brady's name this year. Right. Tom Brady wasn't circling Lamar Jackson's name.
Right, and Lamar Jackson ended up winning MVP. But Tom Brady was like,
But I'm saying he wasn't looking at Week 12 and saying, "Oh, I can't wait to play the Ravens. I want to show Lamar Jackson." It was the other way around. Right. That's exactly, yeah, that's a great point. I totally. And the other thing I think about Dominic Reyes is he hasn't experienced. I mean, this is his first pay-per-view main event. He hasn't got that superstar treatment. Maybe he starts feeling himself. He said to himself, I'm the real deal. He starts feeling himself. He starts slacking and training a little bit, thinking, the riches get to him. We saw in the Embedded he was buying like rings and watches, and he was talking about the finer things in life. He went to the press conference in Boston wearing sunglasses. Like maybe this stuff starts getting to him, and he falls off. We don't know.
Just to get out of here, let's talk about some things courtesy of Mike Bond. In terms of John Jones historically, John Jones' 14 victories in UFC championship fights are most in company history. We talked about in the All Angles. His 20 victories in UFC light heavyweight competition are the most in divisional history. 18-fight UFC unbeaten streak is the longest among active fighters. 18-fight unbeaten streak is longest in company history. 4-fight winning streak at light heavyweight is tied with Corey Anderson for the longest active. His 1,835 total strikes landed in UFC light heavyweight competition, most in divisional history. 1,473 significant strikes, most in divisional history. 42 takedowns landed in UFC heavyweight competition are fourth behind Anderson, Evans, and Bader. His total fight time of 5 hours, 40 minutes, and 15 seconds is most in divisional history, which is it depends on how you process a piece of information like that. But so listen, he's the champ. He's the GOAT. He got the W in the end. That's how we have to process it. We can complain about judges. We can complain about refs. We can cry for Dominic Reyes all we want. In the books, it goes up for John Jones as a W, and that's how we move forward. So we'll go from there. All right, Keith.
John, think about this before we move on. All those crazy records you say, and we lost 2 prime years of his career.
Yeah.
Almost 3 prime years of his career. So how crazy is that?
Yeah, that is crazy. All right, Keith. If Caitlin Chikagian is the best we got to throw at Valentina Shevchenko, then we might as well just bust this division up now and have the Bullet try and build a case for her and Amanda Nunes to fight for a third time. Shevchenko cruised and was barely tested or even touched in this one. So let's get funky with the follow-up questions. I want to talk about her performance, but I'll throw this at you real quick, and then we can get into her performance. The two might go hand in hand. If Shevchenko was a man, how would we view her skill set? Because when I see the different stuff she brings into the cage, and this is not to take away from Amanda Nunes, because she's the GOAT, man. She's the best woman fighter of all time. But I see the diversity of skills with Shevchenko, and it doesn't mean she's the best. But I think that we'd look at her like Jones or GSP if she were a man. And I don't know why we don't process her that way. Maybe it's the losses to Nunes. I'm not sure. Talk to me about the performance. And talk to me about what's next. And I got a doozy of a question after this.
Yeah, so her performance is absolutely fantastic. I mean, this girl is so good. She might be – so to go off about if she was a guy, she might be the best counter-striker in MMA. Like, man or woman. She is – I mean, you come at her, she's going to tag you. Her kicks are lightning fast. That wheel kick I don't know how Caitlin Chiggy ate that. That was as clean. That spinning wheel kick to the face. Oh, we had about, I always watch the fights right here on my couch, and I have friends come over, the big ones, and I had 4 or 5 people there. We all went crazy. That was one of the highest moments where we yelled when spinning wheel kick. She's on another level right now, and there is nobody at flyweight at the moment who comes close to her. Now, I always want to say that at the moment because Demetrius Johnson had a run at flyweight. We said, no one's ever going to beat him, and then Henry Cejudo came along. So someone will come along eventually, but there is nobody on the UFC roster in that division right now that's even in the same atmosphere as Valentina Shevchenko is right now.
Every once in a while, you say the perfect thing to just send me right into the next thing that I have to say. I was going to bring up Lauren Murphy. We'll get to her in a second. But you said on the UFC roster. So let's get funky with this one. Let's get particularly funky with this one.
Valentina Shevchenko smashes her in the very first round.
Okay. So that's out.
Yeah, I'm assuming you're going to say Alina Leigh McFarland.
Keith, the UFC needs Alina Leigh McFarland. If the UFC went into business with Bellator, like they went into business with one championship, what's the trade that gets McFarland over to the UFC? I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
It's Kamaru Usman. Who would you say?
I personally would not trade. If I'm the UFC, I do not trade Kamaru Usman for Alina Leigh McFarland.
Not for nothing, Kamaru Usman's in the way of a lot of things the UFC wants to do, but go ahead.
Yeah,
he's not a very marketable fighter.
I don't even think Alina Leigh McFarland is the best fighter in that division in Bellator.
All right, now we're talking.
I think Juliana Velasquez I think she's going to beat Alina Leigh McFarland. I think she's going to beat her pretty decisively.
So here's my question. How do we solve the Shevchenko problem? Because we know Bellator and UFC are not going into business. Is there anyone out there that you think – do you have to put someone like –
At flyweight?
Yeah.
Joseph Benavidez? I don't know. There's nobody right now. The girl that I was big on, Vivian Araujo, ended up looking really poor in her last fight. So that's the one I said I didn't think she was on Valentina Shevchenko's level, but from what I saw, she looked like the next one. Then she took a big step back in her last fight. Macy Barber is extremely young. We got to remember that. She's very, very young, so obviously she could make huge improvements. But I don't see anybody. But I don't know if it's even that bad. I think people like a winner. You got to market her like you marketed Ronda Rousey. When Ronda Rousey was at her peak and she was breaking pay-per-view records, it was never about who she was facing. It was always about the indestructible. She's taking girls out in 30 seconds, 16 seconds, 18 seconds. If they could do the same thing with Valentina Shevchenko, they could have a gold mine. Go back to boxing, Mike Tyson. It was never about who he was facing. It was about the destructive force. That's what they need to push. They need to push that there's not a girl in her weight class that is even close to her. You face her, she's going to play with you. She's going to do whatever she wants.
So in marketing her, let me ask you a question then. Do we put her out there with feel-good stories and build like Rocky scenarios against her? Because that hurts her marketability. Meaning, I know you don't like the Lauren Murphy fight, and I'm not saying you should, but Lauren Murphy is a very popular fighter. She's someone you can get behind. Roxanne Modafferi is a very popular fighter. She's someone you can get behind. Do booking Valentina with fighters like this and playing the Rocky angle potentially hurt Valentina? Is that the way to go, or does that make things worse?
I don't focus on the opponent. I focus strictly on Valentina. I don't even know. Like her next video, you might not even want to put the person in it. Like, you know how they do this occasionally? I think they did it with Ronda Rousey versus Amanda Nunes. They did it with who else? O'Connor and Cerrone. Like, you don't need somebody else. I think you market this. You show the spinning wheel kick. You show the high kick of Jessica. One thing that hurts her marketing, I think, is the old Russian. I know she's from like 12 different countries. I'm still not even sure where she's from, but I think that hurts. But she speaks English. She speaks it very well. She's attractive. She doesn't have that mean girl feel like Ronda Rousey has.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's people smart enough they could find the angle to develop her. And it's funny because everyone's calling for Amanda Nunes 3. I've seen them fight twice already. I hate trilogies when one person's up 2-0. I'm like, you've had your chances. And the second fight sucked. Like people, everyone forgetting that it was a staring contest between them two.
Yeah, listen, I'm looking at her resume here, and I don't see a lot of names on it in terms of people that. So if I'm looking at strawweight, let's say strawweight's the answer. Someone comes up. All right. I mean, you got a lot of big names at strawweight. You know what I mean? You got Namajunas, Suarez, Ansarov. Obviously, well, that's strawweight, so she wouldn't fight Nunes anyway.
Weili Zhang is
right. Gedalia, Esparza, Watterson, right? Tisha Torres. I mean, you got a lot. I'm just saying, you got a lot of name recognition there. Does anybody come up? Is that the answer? You bring somebody up from strawweight?
Let me ask you this question. Do you think anybody wants to come up to face her? Do you think anybody wants that smoke? Of the people you named, who would jump up?
I think Gedalia would. I think Watterson would.
I
think Suarez would.
Watterson is small for the weight class.
Yeah, but I think
she's small. She's small for strawweight.
Yeah, she used to fight atom weight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't. Yeah.
Which, by the way, let's put a pin on that because there's a guy who jumped up 2 weight classes we're going to talk about later.
Yeah, I don't know, man. So then where's the answer? Tell me,
I don't know. I
just put her in where with the girl that's got the
Rumble,
highest number next to her name, or the lowest number, I should say, and then
what do you do with wrestling, like King of the Ring style? Just kind of let her take every girl gets a round.
There you go.
First round's Jessica Ai, second round's Liz Carmouche. I don't. To me, she's indestructible right now in that weight class. The fact that she was undersized, facing Amanda Nunes, holding her own against Amanda Nunes, that should tell you everything you need to know about Valentina Shevchenko. But you know what, though? We have to remember that we've done this narrative so many times where someone looks indestructible. Ronda Rousey, remember BJ Penn when he was at his second run lightweight, when he was smashing Joe Stevenson and Diego, and we were saying nobody was going to come on. Nobody gave Frankie Edgar a chance. You know, we've done this narrative. I mean, I'm sure there's more. We get the Tito Ortiz. There's always somebody where they look indestructible, Fedor, and something happens.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing is that what ends up happening is that the fighters are ultimately battling boredom in a way, right? Their own lack of interest in fight. That's another piece to it. They're so much better than everybody else that unless they can stay engaged and they're still going, the thing that made you a champion needs to like there's a huge gap between Valentina Shevchenko and Laura Murphy. But not if Laura Murphy keeps showing up to the gym and Valentina stops. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's part of it too. So these things tend to change overnight, in a sense. And all right, let's move on. All right, Keith, let's talk about.
Think about this. Hold on, before you interrupt, we're going to go to Justin Toffer, one out of. Has there been a bigger drop down in talent going from Valentina Shevchenko to Juan Adams? Have we ever had that big of a drop
transition? Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Good Lord.
Outside shot at taking on Valentina Shevchenko, number 11 ranked Antonina Shevchenko. Anything there? Frank and Ken Shamrock scenario, maybe?
Maybe. Oh, who's the two brothers? The Fodor brothers. That one of them that dressed as the superhero.
Karos and Ben.
Yeah, and Ben ended up getting arrested for selling drugs. The guy plays a superhero. He dressed up. He's making national headlines.
Fought crime in Seattle, quote unquote.
And then he got arrested for selling drugs. Good Lord. Was that Batman quote? You either live long enough. How's it go? You live long enough. You live too long as a hero. You end up becoming the
villain. Yep.
I'm not a comic book guy. I'm sorry. I know there's some Marvel. Is that even Marvel?
No, it's DC.
Dude. See, there's some like nerdy person that would kill me right now. I'm sorry. I don't watch those stuff. But I generally know the quote. I apologize.
You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
There you go.
I'm quick, man. I'm quick with the Google for you. All right, Keith. Justin Taffa wants to be the next Mark Hunt, and I was totally in on that plan until Jorgen De Castro turned out the lights on him. Now, obviously, Mark Hunt wasn't undefeated, but I would have thought Taffa got a little further in his career, but here we are. Keith, here's the question we ask of one fight pretty much every recap show now. Is Justin Taffa legit, or is Juan Adams washed? What do we got?
I'm going to go both. How about that?
You find a new way to answer that question every time.
How about that? Yeah, usually I say somewhere between. Honestly,
somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I'm going to go that. Juan Adams sucks. I mean, I don't want to fight a bash in that, but he's just not good. He's not UFC level. He's slow. He comes from a wrestling background, but he's not, he's not a huge, he's not winning national champions in wrestling. And he's he's so slow, so hip, very stiff. He should have just, honestly, his best strategy would have been kind of duck his head and just run across the cage and try to close the distance instead of trying to stay at the outside and wait for his moment. That said, Taffa, I mean, everyone remembers him, he caught Jorgen De Castro with a nice shot, and he got too aggressive and he came in for the kill, and Jorgen smoked him, and that will happen at heavyweight. So he's got some fast hands. I'll give him that. Nice walk-off. I mean, it's so young. I watched interviews with him afterwards. I just like him. Like, he seems like such a likable dude that I want him to be good. So that's why I'll go with it. He's a real deal. How am I not?
Man, I think he's a New Zealander, right? He's a New Zealander.
Oh, yeah, one of those areas. He's New Zealand, Australia.
Born in Australia.
We just put those two countries together already.
I know.
Has any two countries ever been more associated with each other?
I don't think so.
Like, I mean, I can't even think of one that is even close that we say, no, these two countries together.
I mean, just from lack of knowledge when we were kids, maybe like China and Japan. Probably just too mixed up.
Yeah. Right.
But man, those guys over there sure like a walk-off, don't they?
Yeah.
They just hit a guy and walk away. Yeah, I think he's legit. What's funny about Juan Adams, and I'm not going to continue to pile on, but I will say this. He's almost that guy where, Dana in a way is like, if I could put a guy in the regionals and control his career, it would be Juan. So that people would hit him in the regionals. Like, that's the point at which they would face him. That would be Juan Adams. Like, if Dana White controlled LFA and he's like, Juan Adams is going to be the heavyweight champion, and every guy before they go to the UFC has to fight Juan Adams. It seems like he's using that Juan Adams for that in the UFC. Mm-hmm. Man, this was high on the card. Yeah. I mean, this was high for Juan Adams, no?
I think it's because he's from Houston, and
that's fair.
I think another thing that I haven't heard many people say is the fact that there was a very good chance that this fight was going to be over in the first round. And the fact that they had two title fights, they might have needed one to be over quick so they can get if both title fights went 10 rounds, that's a lot of time. It already ends up really late in the East Coast as it is. That's another thing I think why they might have had the heavyweight fight on the main card.
All right, I think we said everything needs to be said about that.
Yeah, whatever.
All right, let's move on. Keith, 50 grand Dan came out looking for that bonus check, and early he looked sharp. However, Mirsad Bektic reeled him in and made the fight, made the thing interesting. Ige got the win. However, it was a split decision. How'd you see it?
I had a 29-28 Ige. It was a very close fight. The first round was clearly Ige. Second round was clearly Bektic. It came down to that third round. And to me, Ige just dug a little deeper. His striking this is a guy who he was first known just as a grappler and not even a great grappler, but his striking is so good and improved now. I mean, he pieced up Bektic on the feet. Before that, he pieced up Kevin Aguilar, who's supposed to be the striker in the battle. And honestly, Ige is right on the cusp of the top 15. I can see him being in the top 15, in the UFC rankings when it comes out next week. Really good showing by Ige.
Yeah, again, you set me up perfectly for the follow-up question, which is Ige says he's refocused on his career now. What do you think his ceiling is? He said that he kind of wanted to get involved in the business aspect of his career, which is probably smart in the long run. I mean, how is this guy destined to become someone who manages fighters or coaches fighters, or do you think that he really can be? You're talking about him being on the cusp of the top 15 now. Is he a top 10 fighter at best? Is he a top 5 fighter at best? What are we looking at?
Well, Well, he just for the record, he actually is a manager. He does. He works with Ali. He's like, I don't know.
That's what I mean. Is that his future? You think?
I mean, he's doing it already, so yeah, sure. And what's better, having a guy manage you who actually, say when he retires, who actually fought. I mean, what advantage that is to understand the day-to-days and the grind and the stuff you need. I'm pulling up the UFC featherweight rankings, and I'm looking. I mean, this is on murderer's row right there. I mean, guys like Mirsad Bektik wasn't even ranked heading into this, so it's just crazy. Danny Gay, he's won 5 fights in a row, and I was a guest on the Sherdog Roundtable this week, making a prediction. I was with Luca Furry and Ant Walker, and hosted by Jack and Constantine. And I mentioned that Bektik was the kind of underachiever, a guy who had all this talent but found ways to not live up to it. And Ige was a classic overachiever, guy who, when you look at him, it doesn't jump out talent, but he's found a way to just pull every little ounce of talent he has and make it happen. And his will to win is huge and stuff like that. I saw his post-fight interview. He was talking about that he doesn't believe any man can hang with him in the third round. Where it comes down to just fortitude and digging deep, that he'll go to a place that no one else can go to. So while I'd say bottom half of top 15 is probably the ceiling, we've seen guys like him. Like, who he reminds me of? Anthony Smith. Now, not in the sense of
skills.
Well, Anthony Smith's big, and obviously not the way they fight, but that thing where everyone doubted him, and suddenly Anthony Smith was fighting for a title that he earned. He earned that shot. But could Dan Ige keep picking him off? But I know we'd like to do who's next, but doesn't Dan Ige, he deserves a top 15 opponent next?
Yeah, for sure.
I was, when I was looking at the rankings, I'm looking at the names. Josh Emmett just jumps off at me. It's like, what a fantastic fight that would be. I want to see Josh Emmett and Dan Ige next.
It's interesting. Just to talk about what you were talking about there. Eric Nixick, who's the coach at Extreme Couture, he put on his social media today that him and Ige train the third round, right? Meaning when they're training, they're like, what's next? And they talk about that, Ige's going out in the third round looking for finishes, and it's really fascinating. If you go to Nixick's social media, you guys can see that. It's the video of them training it, and I think there's a clip of it happening in the actual fight itself, which is very interesting. I mean, obviously you don't get to work with Ali on that side. I mean, listen, I'm sure there's a bunch of people that want to work with Ali. He's the number one manager, arguably, in the game. So, the kid's got to have a good head on his shoulders to get that opportunity. So he obviously carries that into the octagon, and good for him. So I think definitely a top 15 opponent is in his future, and I like what we saw from the guy. All right. Keith, I didn't like this one. I didn't think Lewis won. We're moving on to Derek Lewis and Ali Latifi. Although the stats tell the narrative that he did, and I get that. I just felt he just seemed like super inactive, man. I saw it, and he wasn't pushing the fight. And again, we'll talk about the rules of the octagon and why that matters and all this. But I just got a sense that it was the Ngannou fight all over again. He was more active than he was in that fight, but I saw this. Like, there was parts of this fight where I felt like maybe his back was hurting again. Like, he didn't seem himself. And the last fight, I remember that he fought. I remember we were talking about, like, does he have a new way that he's training? He seemed a lot more spry. He was doing kicks. Like, he seemed like he was hopping around the octagon. This time I didn't see that. Who'd you have in this one, and what'd you think of Lewis's performance?
I mean, it wasn't a great performance. I don't think it was – I'm not that low on it as you are. I scored a 29-28 for him. I gave him the first round based on Latifi doing absolutely nothing. He was basically backing up trying to get the clinch. He couldn't get the clinch. Second round, he got the takedown. Didn't do much with it. I mean, held him down, but that's the only action that happened. In the third round, he got a couple takedowns, but he landed one significant strike on top. The Lewis getting up and just rallying in the last minute, to me, won the fight. It was more effective. There was more action in that 1 minute than Latifi did in 4 minutes. So I did give it 29-28 Lewis. I know there's a lot to take away. I mean, Latifi wanted to go for a takedown. Lewis wanted to keep him on the feet, and they kind of was canceling each other out because of that.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's a little bit like, sometimes I'm prone to falling for the Joe Rogan thing, which is the narrative thing, right? Like I fall into a trap with a narrative or a story, and here's my thing for this fight. I felt like people were so convinced that Derek Lewis was just going to murder this kid that when he came out and was completely inactive, I probably put a little bit more weight in his inactivity than I should have, because I'm like, oh, look, everybody was thinking this guy was going to get murdered, and here he is standing in front of Derek Lewis. That does not mean that Alir Latifi is winning rounds because Derek Lewis isn't taking him out. So, all right, let's talk about Lewis moving forward. I mean, can we – I think I've asked you this question before, and every time I ask it, you kind of say, I don't even know why you're classifying him that in the first place, but can we be done with Derek Lewis as a legit contender, as someone who matters in the heavyweight division? Or, I mean, if he mattered, wouldn't he take this guy out?
Yeah, well, I've never been high on Derek Lewis, and we've talked about this a million times. I don't see the talent. That said, the division is so shallow that he has to be in the top 5 to 7 rankings, and people love him. I mean, people gravitate to his personality. They waited for him to say something funny. When he was looked like he might lose the decision, like guy sitting next to me was all disappointed. And he's like, "Oh man, we're not going to see him do an interview and say something funny." So I think he matters in that division just from the sense that as much as I don't see a lot of talent in him, there's not that many guys who can beat him in the division. So I don't believe he'll ever win a title. I don't think he'll even get back to a title shot. But he's going to be in the top 5 for at least a little bit more.
He's a fun guy, and that's why he's around. I mean, there's been guys in the history of the UFC. I mean, he's probably more talented, for sure more talented than Mike Perry, but that's kind of what, Mike Perry, Mayhem Miller, these guys, Felony Charles Bennett, these guys that kind of add a little bit of flavor to – now some guys add flavor to the game, and they're real fighters like Rampage, Forrest Griffin. They're fun guys, and they're championship level.
I think Adesanya has a little bit of that.
Yeah, but I think Derek Lewis is going to be and here's another guy you can make a case for, a guy like Mark Hunt, who was a very honest fighter. People liked him. He was very popular. Roy Nelson, guys that just, that might be with the baton that Derek Lewis is taking. Maybe he's taking the baton from Roy Nelson of this, the comic relief in the heavyweight division. And I think he's a little cooler than Roy Nelson. I think he's a little funnier than Roy Nelson, but that's kind of that's the cloth they're both cut from. All right.
Tank Abbott fits in that one too.
Tank Abbott, 100%. All right, Keith, let's run through the prelims. There was definitely some bonus money to be made in the prelims. We'll certainly get to that. We'll start with Trevin Giles defeating James Krause by split decision, 29-28, 28-29, 29-28. I'm begging for you to say something that's going to set up a not for nothing later. So what do you think about this fight?
Well, so I was super torn because as a media member, I try not to root, but I've said before, I am a police officer. Trevin Giles is a police officer. I'm naturally going to root for a police officer to do. But on the same sense, how can you not root for a guy who took a fight on 1 day's notice? The guy, James Krause, showed up to corner guys and instead takes a fight, but he takes it on 1 day's notice, moving up a weight class. But think about this. James Krause just recently moved up to welterweight. He was a lightweight, and Trevin Giles at one point was a light heavyweight. So at one point, we had a lightweight facing a light heavyweight. Between if we want to go to the two extremes of that they fought. So that to me, that's crazy. We talk about guys having big balls in this. We talk about baddest mother effer. I think it's time for Jorge Masvidal to hand over that belt and go give it to James Krause, because to me, James Krause is the baddest MFer. And the fact that he almost got a first-round submission was insane. The difference in this fight, Krause is the more talented fighter. And I thought that was on perfect display. The only difference is he couldn't handle Trevin Giles' power. I mean, Trevin Giles was much bigger than him. And when you have no training camp and you have to fight a guy who's much bigger than you, it didn't work out. I scored at 29-28 Giles.
Just like Joe Solis. So now we start to find some common ground between you and Joe.
Maybe me and Joe are together.
All right, let's move on to the next fight. It is Chaos Williams defeating Alice Morono by KO strikes.
Andrea Lee and Lauren Murphy.
Oh, okay, let's go with Andrea Lee and Lauren Murphy.
Yeah, I scored it. So I want to say this. I scored at 30-27 Andrea Lee. That said, I don't think it was a robbery at all. Because when I scored my rounds, all 3 rounds I go, wow, that's a really close round. Could go either way. And I'm going to give it to Lee. Like I leaned to Lee. But I was okay if someone's sitting next to me and they scored it for Murphy, I'm like, okay, I got it. It was really close. So I don't think it was a robbery at all. Lauren Murphy's really improving, especially on the stand-up. She has a jab now. She was jabbing the hell out of a taller fighter in Angela Lee. I was impressed by Lauren Murphy. While I do think Angela Lee won, Lauren Murphy was a girl that didn't look like a UFC talent. When she was on the reality show, like, oh, they're bringing back Lauren Murphy. Like, she's not even, like, UFC level. Now she's 1 win away from getting a title shot.
Yeah, it's interesting.
She could be 1 injury away from getting the title shot.
That's true.
If 1 or 2 fighters are not available, Laura Murphy could be the next fighter to get decimated by Valentina Shevchenko. She might be the next sacrifice to Valentina Shevchenko.
And I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure that she has left the lab and she's training out of Texas.
Yeah.
So, that could be it. The lab, there's a lot going on with the lab. There's a lot of fighters there. You can kind of get lost in the shuffle. So maybe she's at a gym now where there's a little bit more, focus put on her.
Yeah. I think she's just in, like, some small gym, too. It's not.
Yeah. So there you go. She might have gotten everything she needed from the lab in terms of training techniques and procedures and all that. And now she's taking that back to Texas. All right. Let's move on to Chaos Williams and Alex Morono. Chaos Williams was victorious by KO in the very first round. What'd you think here?
So when I did tape study, I'm in this thing at Cage Side Press where it's ran by Sean Bitter. He reached out to a bunch of media members. And since 2020, we watch film, well, at least I watch film, but we look at the fights of people who making their UFC debuts, and then we predict whether they win or lose. And then he's like keeping standings, how well you do. I'm 0 for 7 right now. I haven't picked one right yet. So as much as I was bragging about almost picking Dominic Reyes, this is me trying to be humble how terrible I am. When I watched film like Kalen Williams, I did not see a UFC caliber fight. I'm like, yeah, he's big for the weight class. He looks like he's strong, but he's not talented. He doesn't have a lot of technique. Alex, I was so confident Alex Moran. I thought Alex Moran was going to start him in the first round. And boy, was I wrong. I was that pie all over my face because I thought Alex Moran was like, oh, this is the easiest. This is the easiest pick on the entire card. What do I know? What do I know?
All right, let's move on. Mario Bautista defeated Miles Johns by TKO via strikes in round number 2. What do you got here?
Bautista looks good, man. Bautista's the guy that we were talking about. Dan Ige stand-up improving. Mario Bautista's the guy that he looks like he's making huge leaps and bounds between these fights. Miles Johns was the guy that I was really high on in LFA and the Contender Series. I don't know if he's making the improvements that a guy like Mario Bautista is. I think he might have hit his peak, or he's kind of when you work it out at the gym a lot, and then you kind of plateau out. I feel like Miles Johns might have plateaued out right now, and I'm gonna save a couple things with this fight later on for the fun stuff we do. But Miles Johns wasn't listening to coach. He kept leaving his head. He was throwing and leaving his head over his shoulder. Over his knee, and his coach pointed out that you got to get hurt, and he got to get hit with the knee, and that's exactly what happened.
All right, Journey Newsom defeated Domingo Pilarte by TKO via strikes in round number 1. How about here?
This one I actually did an interview for a radio show, and I missed the whole fight. I was kind of talking. I'm like, oh, fight's about to start. Let me finish this interview. And the next one I looked, and Domingo Pilarte was on the ground, knocked out. So I guess a nice win for Journey Newsom.
Andre Ewell defeated Jonathan Martinez by split decision, 29-28, 28-29, 30-27. Your man Joe Solis was on this one. What do you got here?
Yeah, again, I scored at 29-28 Martinez, but again, I don't think it was a robbery. Anybody who said it was not a robbery. It comes down to whether you like the volume of Andre Ewell or the effective or the significant, the power shots of John Martinez. Martinez, I thought, landed the heavier shots, but Ewell landed more shots. It was a hard fight to score. I gave it to Martinez. Because I thought he hurt Ewell a couple times, but Ewell didn't really hurt Martinez. But I'm okay with Ewell getting the win.
Not a hard fight to score for Joe. 30-27. He saw it clear as day.
He must have the best angle there. It was Joe the guy who was looking at his phone. Did we ever get who was the guy looking at his phone?
No. Rogan, you know what?
I wish Joe Rogan would scream it to like the production van, like get the camera on him, show this right now. Like, I would have loved if he did that.
I would have loved if I don't even need that. I would have loved if Joe just took a picture of the guy and tweeted it.
Yeah,
that would have worked for me.
Something.
All right, up next, Yusef Zalal defeated Austin Lingo by unanimous decision, 30-27s across the board. What'd you have here?
Yeah, so here's again another fight that I absolutely botched. So two debut guys. When I watched film of them, I said Zalal's not a UFC level fighter. He's kind of got the call in Texas. They needed a fight. You happened to be there. And Austin Lingo was a guy that I was pretty high on. I was like, man, he looks like a good prospect. And boy, was I wrong. Zalal looked fantastic. His movement, his elusiveness was on point. And Lingo's wrestling is terrible. Like, he was getting, like, I don't explain it. Like, if you ever wrestled and you call him a fish, the guy you just grab his leg and just falls right over, like, he has a little fish in him. And all the wrestlers know what I'm talking about. He, like, flopped down like a fish.
All right, let's move on.
And listen,
go ahead.
It pains me because we'll talk about this later, but I know what you're going to get at. But I'm not hating on Austin Lingo because I picked him to win by first round knockout.
Yeah.
And we'll get to it later. I'm waiting for my trending down.
You know what? Okay. I don't want to step on you trending down, but at what point are we going to talk about the curse of the Shilbino? You talked to Saif Saud, Fortis MMA 0-3. Are we going to cover this? Is this going to be addressed?
I'm going to hit it in my trending down.
All right, fair enough. All right, let's hit the housekeeping stuff. The UFC promotional guidelines compliance payout for the event totaled $243,000. Trevin Giles, James Krause, Chaos Williams, and Mario Bautista earned $50,000 for their UFC 247 Fight Night bonuses. It was disclosed as well by Dana White that he would be cutting James Krause, in his words, a nice check. In addition to the $50,000, debuting fighters went 2-1 on the card. UFC 247 drew an announced attendance of 17,401 for a live gate of 3,549,418. Betting favorites went 6-5 on the card. One fight had even odds. Betting favorites improved to 3-0 in UFC headliners this year. Total fight time for the 12-bout card was a brisk 2 hours and 10 minutes. All right, Keith, let's move on to the fun stuff. Let's start with trending up, trending down. Who'd you have?
So trending up, I had three guys. I always try to stick it to three. Caleb Williams, like I said, this is a guy that I didn't say he was UFC caliber fighter. This is a guy who only turned pro less than 3 years ago. Now he's got to win a first-round knockout in his UFC debut against a tough veteran, Alex Marno. So Caleb Williams, Chaos. I love his nickname, Chaos the Ox Fighter. I don't know what that means, but that's a great nickname. The other one, Dan Ige. This guy's got 5 wins in a row, looking better and better. I took out a good, tough guy, and like I said, I think he should face a ranked guy. I don't like his call-out. He called out the Korean Zombie. The Korean Zombie's getting, he might get a title shot next. If you're going to call out a guy in the top 15, make it something you could actually – if you're outside the top 15 and you're trying to get someone in the top 15, make it one that you actually might get, like Josh Emmett, like Shane Burgos, Sadiq Youssef, something like that. I wish he did that instead. And then my last one, I don't do this often, but is pick a guy in a loss. But how could you not pick this guy in a loss? That's Dominic Reyes. I mean, the guy was a massive underdog. People were laughing at him. People thought this. People were talking about how terrible the card was. John Jones going to wreck him. This week he talked about the athlete thing, and he got a lot of what's the word? You got a lot of hate for that. A lot of roasting for the athlete line. You don't see a lot of roasting now. And this is a guy we don't hear a lot about the Oostimir loss. Remember when they said, "Oh, he should have lost to Volkan Oostimir"? You're not hearing that brought up right now either. So, Dominic Reyes is my 3 trending up.
Okay, so for me, I'm gonna stick with the hometown and put trending up with Lauren Murphy and Mario Bautista. I think they both did a lot for themselves, especially on a night when Valentina looked super dominant. I think Lauren helped herself out by saying, okay, if we're all miles away from Valentina, why not me? Right? If none of us are close, why not give me the shot? And I like that. Same thing with Bautista. I think he moved himself up the ladder a little bit. Trending down for me is Bones Jones. I don't want to put him trending down to take away from what Reyes did. So I hesitated to have him trending down. I was going to put another person there, but I think they're going to end up on the cut list. I think we both know who I'm talking about. But I think Bones Jones really he needs to figure out what the next move is, and I don't think it involves Dominic Reyes.
Yeah, so I have 3 trending down. The first one is the guy that I'm sure you were talking about. I'm going to go Juan Adams. This is the guy just a fight ago, he was in a marquee fight, got to go against Greg Hardy. He was talked a lot of junk about Greg Hardy, got taken out in like a minute. Now he gets put on some reason after getting taken out by Greg Hardy, he gets put on the main card in his hometown and gets walked off, knocked out. He's lost 3 fights in a row. Juan Adams' stock has never been lower. My second trending down, Joe Solis. This guy's terrible. He had 30-27 Uhl. He had the 49-46 Jones. But the worst one of all, he gave Trevin Giles the first round against James Krause when he spent majority of the fight fighting off a submission attempt where he almost got taken out. Terrible night for Joe Solis. But the one that hurts me more than anything, trending down, Fortis MMA. Fortis MMA had 3 fights. This is arguably the hottest team. They have a winning percentage the last 2 years, like over 90%. Absolutely crazy. I had Coach Saif Sayoud on this week. He was on my MMA Takeover podcast. We did about 45 minutes. We talked about these matchups and everything. I was telling people when they were betting, I said, I have a Fortis MMA parlay. Take all 3 guys. I was so confident in all 3, and they went 0 for 3. All 3 guys were favored. I expect Fortis MMA to have some really good nights, but this was a nightmare for Fortis MMA.
Yeah, here's the deal. I think that it was a bad night, but I don't think it's indicative of a larger thing. And you know what? It's funny. People used to ask me what I liked about MMA, and I said I like that it's different from boxing in this sense, that a fight can end like that, and it can in MMA too. But you got to go out cold. In boxing too, but you got to go out cold. In boxing, it's like, all right, I knock you down, then I'm going to step back. Somebody's going to count. In MMA, it's like I knock you down, and then I swarm on you. And that's what I always liked about it. That's the Juan Adams thing to me. Like, this kid's career changed in an instant. It was like Greg Hart. If you want to use in-cage things as a metaphor for his career, Greg Hardy was the knockdown, right? And the fight Justin Taffa was the finish. Yeah. Right? He got knocked down by Hardy, and Justin Taffa finished him. It might be over for the kid. All right, let's move on to Not For Nothing.
I don't feel that way before. I'm still very high on those guys with just terrible nights. So you got to put them in. I had to put them in the trend down. I talk about it every week on the recap. I had to put them in there.
All right, let's hit Not For Nothing. I got a couple this week. Not for nothing, I touched on it earlier. Maybe we don't appreciate Valentina Shevchenko as much as we should. Let's talk about the fact that she may or may not be a spy. Let's talk about the fact that, my favorite thing of Valentina Shevchenko's is that I heard a rumor, and this is probably just, Twitter bullshit, and I never substantiated it, which is that, like, she never sleeps in the same place twice or whatever, which was hilarious and plays to the spy narrative. But the other thing was, like, in the post-fight, Joe Rogan's interviewing her, and he goes, they're talking, and she goes, yeah, I lived in Houston for 2 years. And I'm like, of course you lived in Houston for 2 years. You're like on the run. You got 9 passports. Of course you probably lived in every damn, city you've ever fought in at some point. All right, up next, Not For Nothing. This is the one I've been waiting for. And listen, I'm not trying to be overly critical of Dominic Reyes, but my friend, you got to hear this one. Not for nothing, but you don't win championships if you don't perform in championship rounds.
That's right.
And if you lost the 4th and 5th, I'm not trying to just don't leave it in the hands of the judges at your feet. But I will say this, if you won either one of them, you'd be champ right now. So those are the championship rounds for a reason. You won a 3-round fight against John Jones, and unfortunately, my friend, we fight 5 when the belts are on the line.
Except for Joe. Joe still would have had him losing.
Joe's fine.
I'm not joking. For the record, if he won one of them, he still loses 48-47 on Joe's card. But he does win on the other 2 cards.
There you go. And you're not going to like this one, but here it comes. Not for nothing, but this isn't Olympic diving. You don't get points for degree of difficulty. Krause took the fight on super short notice and was well compensated. But this idea, he's a gangster for just doing it. Listen, my man took an L. And an L is an L. When you agree to take a fight, I'm gonna give you a comparison, and I know I hate doing this, but it's relevant. Okay, I hate bringing myself into stuff. I know you don't. Trust me, I hate it. Last week we talked about, or last podcast you and I did together, we talked about that Ragnar ran. I got notified about that thing 2 weeks ahead of time. Like 2 weeks from doing that, someone said, hey, you want to do this? I was like, sure. When I was running it, and I had my teammates in a van waiting for me to get back, I don't get to say, hey, I just found out about this 2 weeks ago, and you guys have been training for 6 months for it. I'm there, and I got to do what I got to do. I got to hold up my end of the bargain. So, yeah, it was nice of him to take the fight, and, yeah, that makes him a gangster, but he still lost.
Hey, you know what James Krause's response to that would be?
What?
But I didn't have 2 weeks.
That's true. He barely had 2 days. All right.
No, he didn't have. No, he didn't have 2 days.
I know. Last one, and we've touched on this, and now I think it's time to probably drop the hammer on this guy. Not for nothing, but maybe we don't put a guy in the main event of a huge fight judging if he hasn't judged an MMA fight in 3 years. I'm looking at the history of Joe Solis, and the last fight he had judged prior to the Andre Ewell fight, okay, which is the first fight of the night he judged, was Volkan Ozdemir against Ovince St. Preux, February of 2017. So 3 years and 4 days prior to the Jones fight, and they give this guy the main event, was the last time he had judged. And maybe they thought that between the Andre Ewell and the Trevin Giles fight, he was just going to figure it all out. And, it's like riding a bike. I don't think so. I think that he did a horrible job, and I think that he was put in place to do a horrible job. I think the commissions as a whole should have acted better in assigning judges.
Well, I used to judge. This is a true story. I used to judge for an organization called Ice Fighter. I judged back in 2006, I think was the last time I judged. So when the UFC comes to Boston, I'm going to throw my hat in there.
You should.
See if I get a chance. I mean, it's only been 14 years, but I might have a shot.
You should. And listen, for all we know, he stays home watches every card and does the judges it just like we do. All right, let's move on to the cut.
Hold on. Let me give my.
Go ahead. No, you're not for nothing.
Yeah, so I only got 4. Not for nothing. Can we please figure out the ESPN broadcasting? Like, can we not have college basketball? I guess switch to watching on ESPN News and shit. Like, come on, guys, get that together. Not for nothing, Lauren Murphy. The division is wide open. Why do you call it Roxanne Modafferi? Even though you do it nicely, if you call it Roxanne, you look like the bad guy. Like, don't call it Roxanne. Not for nothing, Valentina Shevchenko. If you're going to do your dance, take the belt off so it doesn't go flying across the face. And my last one, guys, why does every fighter from the Australia, New Zealand area always say they want to be the next Mark Hunt? Mark Hunt has a 13-14 MMA record. I don't want to be the next 13-14 fighter.
That's true. All right, let's move on to the cut list. I'll start just to steal. It's Juan Adams. He's got to go. And I say that with all due respect to fighters and the UFC and everything, but he's not holding up his end of the bargain right now.
Yeah, I'm going to add to that list. I'm going to add Domingo Pilarte. I think it's time for him to go too.
All right, let's move on to the shocker of the night. For me, it would have to be the Derek Lewis-Latifi fight. I was shocked to say that I was shocked by Reyes' performance would be to think that I didn't think he deserved a title shot. Everybody was saying that when the Latifi-Lewis fight got booked, it was going to be a crime scene at the end of it, and it wasn't. So that was the thing that shocked me the most.
My thing has got to be the man talking on his phone as he's whatever. The guy judging, looking at his phone. I don't know what he's doing. Putting in. Maybe he was putting in his dinner for his fitness app or something. I don't know what he was doing.
Maybe he's got a Verdict MMA account. Maybe he was actually or maybe he's got MMA decisions. Maybe he was checking to see what.
Would it be awesome if he had like the unified rules up and he was just like refreshing himself or something.
If you are a fan of this show and happen to have a picture of that guy, please send it to us because I will make 1,000 memes with that of all the possible things that he could have been looking at on his phone that were not the fight.
Hey, what if he did? What if the guy? We all say to kill him. What if it was like the UFC fight metric and he's actually keeping up with significant strikes?
I know, wouldn't that be?
He actually was, which would actually be cheating. You're not supposed to have that, but like I don't care if they do. Like,
Right.
what if he actually trying to help himself out, and we're all killing the guy?
Exactly. Let's move on to From the Notebook. My big takeaway from this one, a lot of people didn't like Cruz and Rogan together. It's interesting. One of the things that I heard was, and I remember being critical of this, that they used to just bicker and try and one-up each other. And now it's like, you could tell production teams talk to them, and now it's like, it's like, when you're always arguing with your brother and your dad says, if you boys can't get along, I'm whipping both your asses. And now it's like they're overly nice to each other. That's part of it. The second part of it would be that they turn the end.
Like us.
Yeah.
It's like us. Kyle had to talk to us. They had to
there
tell
you go.
us.
Straighten this out. That would be the other part was at the end of the show where they just turned it into this whole like MMA rules reform and commissions and all that. I heard somebody that had a really good point. I can't remember who it was. They said, here's this moment that casuals are tuning in. You could have made a star in Dominic Reyes. You could have made a star in John Jones. Instead of doing that, you tell everyone that your sport is broken. That's what you use that time for. And so they were completely against that aspect of it. Talk to me about Cruz and Rogan the whole night.
I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to go the other end. We've been constantly saying the time is passing Joe Rogan by that he seems not interested, that I've always recently thought he was the weakest link. I liked Cruz. I liked DC. I think all the fighters, Paul Felder, Dan Hardy, I think they all do a fantastic job. But I've kind of been like, I'm kind of ready for Joe Rogan to move on. I thought Joe Rogan was great tonight, great last night, I should say. And I love the back and forth with Cruz. I love them going off about a guy not watching the fight, looking at his phone. I love them going on because this is what's happening. You can point out the flaws in the UFC and MMA. I think that's a good thing because what happens is when the casuals tune in for a couple fights and John Jones, someone that they might tune in for, and they're mad and they say the casual thing is, it was rigged. They say stuff like, the UFC wasn't going to let John Jones rule. It wasn't lose, even though the UFC has no saying over the judges. That's not their employees, but that's what you know how many people believe that? Like 90% of MMA fans think that those are UFC employees. Like they'll say, they're going to give the judge. I had 2 or 3 guys here at my house saying it. They're going to give it to John Jones. No way, he's not going to win. So to point out the flaws, they're already saying that. So agree with them and be like, yeah, we know we have problems. We want to fix it.
Yeah.
So I feel that way more. Like if you call up a business and you complain about something that they do wrong, I feel like if they acknowledge it and say we do need to fix it, you're more likely to use them than if they like try selling you a different product.
That's fair. But okay, let's hit this real quick, and this is more a early stoppage type of thing. But let's just hit this real quick. So, do you think that the UFC should play any role in fixing this? Like, do you think that the UFC should come up with the way that a fight should be judged, but have a third party judge? So like, this is how you judge our sport, but yet you can still use your commissioners, but they need to follow these guidelines.
Well, I think this, and I've been saying this, I think we need to change MMA altogether. We need one set of rules. And I mean that overseas too. I had one championship I think there need to be one set of rules. Not like Dominic Cruz was saying in the broadcast. We don't need 25 different rules at different athletic commissions. No, we need one set of rules. Well, how would that happen? And judging criteria falls underneath those rules. The true unified rules. The word is unified. You need to get first, the people that need to get brought to the table is promoters. Obviously, you're not going to get every single, but 4 or 5 of the top promoters. Someone representing the UFC, someone representing Bellator, someone representing one championship, whatever, 4 or 5 of them. Then I think you need fighters. I don't think you could use active fighters because it's you might want to bend the rules that what you think would help you, but get a couple retired fighters who are active. Maybe some coaches, someone retired fighters, people, like Michael Bisping, be perfect. Michael Bisping just recently retired. Dan Henderson, guys like that. Then get media members, get some of the top media members from different sites. Get someone from Sherdog, get someone from MMA Fighting, get someone from ESPN, MMA Junkie, whatever. Then get some commissions, the top commissions that you actually think have it going. Get these 4 or 5, and you have a huge room, and you just iron it out. It might take a year to iron it out, but iron it out. I think that's what MMA drastically needs to get done, and have true unified rules, same weight classes, same rules, same judging criteria, everything across the board.
Here's where I agree and sort of disagree with you. I do agree with you on that, and we do have to decide if this is an MMA fight, what does that mean? Like, if this is a basketball game, what does that mean? Where I disagree is I think that the problem is that the UFC is conducted or takes place in a lot of different areas, and those areas have different rules. I think the UFC should have a set of rules and judging criteria they follow, but I'm fine with one championship having a different criteria and PFL having a different criteria. I think that makes it interesting. Like, for example, the XFL started this weekend. I'm okay with them being weird, doing like weird stuff and having I know that I'm not watching the NFL when I'm watching the XFL. So the idea that you can go to another promotion and have a different rule set, I'm okay with. But just to keep things interesting. But I do see the value in having it the same across the board. So I'm kind of two minds about it. But I see where you come from. All right, let's move on to technique of the night. I'm going to start, and it's not so much a technique, but more a moment or like a turning point. It basically is a technique. Trevin Giles battling when James Krause had his back swung the whole fight. I mean, he was in real trouble. You know, Krause had him body locked. It was in deep. He was working after the neck, and Giles turning that around and then kind of working his way back out of it. That to me is a guy who took this, you know, I'm about to get finished by a guy who, you know, took the fight yesterday into a performance where he got paid. And to me, that was the most impressive technique / turning point of the night.
Yeah, I mean, he had a chance to be done with that fight. He had a chance to be out. I saw somebody, I'll say it off air. Listen, I learned from Stephen A. Smith, I'm not going to say somebody quit on air, but I'm going to say something to you. I'll say it to you out there who I think found a way out. And it's actually something that me and Coach talked about on Coach Safe Sayer talked about on MMA Takeover. Like, there's times when it's get hard and you want out. We've all seen it. We're like, that guy wants out. Trevor Giles didn't do that. My technique was Mario Batista against Miles Johns. His step in a knee. He was feinting, and he was feinting to draw out the attacks from Miles Johns, but it actually had the opposite effect. He was freezing Miles Johns, which is fine too. If you can do feint where they're freezing, they're worrying what you're doing. He wasn't firing his takedowns. He wasn't firing his big shots, and then that led to the perfectly timed flying knee. I thought that was just great technique by Mario Batista. So my technique of the night is that step in kind of flying knee by Mario Batista.
Let's move on to why this card mattered. So for me, it was a big enough fight and a big enough stage that it may, we say this all the time, so it may or may not bring about judging reform. That could be a reason why it matters. The other thing is that I think that we're at a crossroads now. We talked about this earlier with Dominic Reyes, where is he going to be Johnny Hendricks or is he going to be Georges St. Pierre? Is he going to be St. Pierre after he fought Hughes, or is he going to be Hendricks after he fought GSP? And that's the interesting thing that I'm taking away from this. What is next for Dominic Reyes? Is this – listen, same thing happened with Gustafsson. Gustafsson could have gone on to be this tremendous fighter, and the next thing you know, Anthony Johnson knocked him out, and, you know, we're back to the drawing board. So – I don't know. We'll see. But that's what makes this card interesting for me. What about you? Yeah,
actually, we almost hit it very similar. So the thing that really jumped out to me more than anything is that we need some major changes in MMA. And I don't know if I've ever remembered it being brought to the attention, talked about as much after an event than this one. And the other thing, I actually didn't talk about Reyes as my second one. I actually thought about John Jones. Is John Jones is like the end near? Is he not, you know, sneak peek, Sherdog is going to have a new person at the top of the pound for pound rankings. It's not going to be John Jones. So is he declining? Is the end near? It looks like it.
All right, let's move on to book the co-main and main, then we'll grade the card and get out of here. Just real quickly, I'll tell you the fighter. You tell me who you'd like to see him go against next. John Jones.
I'm going to go with it's the strategy I said earlier. Anderson, Blachowicz winner. I think he should do that, then move up.
I'm with you that I think that could be an easy paycheck for him. If I'm him and I feel like I can be had, I'd rather be had historically against Stipe Miocic than against Corey Anderson or Jan. I'd rather that my legacy be that Stipe got the drop on me and not one of those two guys.
Yeah, I just think that neither one of those guys have a shot. I just think it's an easy paycheck. Still,
Dominic Reyes.
Just based on availability, kind of, I'm going to go with the loser of Corey Anderson, Jan Blachowicz.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I mean,
they're only a week apart too, the fights.
Yeah. So for me, like you talked about, availability is a big one. Who the hell knows what's going on with Santos, but it doesn't seem like he's going to be anytime soon.
Yeah.
Anthony Smith booked. Anderson and Blachowicz is booked. If I'm Ozdemir, I'm on social media, but that's neither here nor there.
You know what, though? You know how John Jones run away from Dominic Reyes? If I'm Ozdemir, I'd run away from Dominic Reyes. And the point, like, a lot of people think you won. I actually scored it for Reyes, but a lot of people think you won, and I don't think you're winning a rematch. So maybe you just be happy with people saying you won.
Or maybe you hold that trump card. Maybe you keep it in your back pocket if he does get the belt. Then you're like, now's the time that I'd like my rematch, please. My close fight. Can I have that rematch now?
It's like the best thing that ever happened to Kat Zingano was that she didn't get that rematch against Amanda Nunes.
Yeah, because everybody thinks, yep.
She has that win. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Valentina.
Sorry, did you pick someone?
For Reyes? Yeah, I'll go with you. I'll go with the loser of the.
It's not a sexy pick. It's not a sexy pick, especially if it's a loser. You know.
I mean, if you're him, you have a real conundrum here. Do you just wait out John Jones?
Yeah. John has too many options that you could be waiting for nothing. You could move on from.
Shevchenko.
I'm gonna go with Joanne Calderwood. She has won. I think she won 4 of her last 5 or 3 of her last 4. I thought about going Roxanne Modafferi. You could maybe play up the, avenging her sister's loss. But I don't know. I think the Modafferi Lauren Murphy fight makes a little sense. So I guess Calderwood could be the next one to be sacrificed.
Yeah, I think the weird thing with Modafferi is that you don't gain, you risk more than you gain if you're Valentina Shevchenko fighting Roxanne Modafferi. She is skilled enough that she could pull something off. I doubt it, but so you beat the hell out of her and everybody hates you. So what do you really gain from a fight like that? Not much. And then lastly, Caitlin Chikagian.
I went with Jessica Ai, both girls who recently lost to Shevchenko. Neither one is really in the title picture right now. They both got smoked, so you can completely eliminate one by having them face each other, and then the other one stays relevant.
That's fine with me. I mean, I'm in as much as I was excited about her getting this fight, I'm not really. Well, I mean, let's put it so. Do either of the girls we just talked about? Do any of the girls we just talked about deserve the fight?
Deserve? No one jumps out. That's why.
I mean, I'm saying Modafferi, Murphy. Does anybody deserve to fight Chikagian as if I win this fight, the title fight's next? Would you hate Chikagian against Lauren Murphy? Would you hate that fight?
Right now, yeah, because I thought Chikagian. I mean, oh wait, hold on. You say Chikagian versus? I was thinking you meant Shevchenko versus Lauren Murphy. No, I don't hate that.
I think whoever this person is that you think maybe you could market against Shevchenko needs to fight Chikagian next. Okay. That's the path.
The problem is, what if Chikagian wins?
Yeah, then you got a problem on your hands. Well, she got to fight somebody. Then what you do is if Chikagian wins, you act like, well, Lauren Murphy's only ranked 7th, so it's not that impressive a win.
I hear something crazy. If Macy Barber beat Roxanne Modafferi like most people thought she would, she probably was getting the next title shot. How scary would that have been? How scary would that have been?
That's crazy.
She wasn't ready.
All right, let's grade the card. What you got?
I went really high. Obviously, there's a lot of controversy, but there was a lot of exciting. I mean, these back and forth fights, like the 6 fights that went decision, they were all excited. We had flying knee knockouts. We had knockouts in their debut. So I went a B+. I didn't go an A. I was close to giving A, but I'll go a B+. It was a solid night.
Yeah, was it? I don't know. It was a lot going on. It was good. And you know what? I wanted to say C, but I think that the prelims were better than a C.
Yeah, the prelims were so good. And
yeah, I'll give it a B. I'm with you.
The judging was questionable, but the action was really good.
All right, guys, that's a wrap. Before we let you go, let's talk about the network. Be sure to also listen to all the other content on LoudMouth MMA Podcast Network, including, which is currently has dropped, the Not Safe for Work podcast, Kyle Steele and Fred Kirby. Between the links, hosted by Mike Heck and starring an all-star cast of writers from around MMA, including Davidson Baker, who was on site in Houston, Craig Allen, Keith Shillan, the Bellator Recap Show with Keith Shillan and Davidson Baker, Early Stoppage with myself and Craig Allen, the Breakdown Show with Max and Marcel, MMA Yesterday with Kyle Steele and Keith Shillan, the MMA Takeover with Keith Shillan, Off the Cuff, hosted by Mike Heck, with Craig Allen, with Drake Riggs, with Kyle Steele, and the Kyle Steele Show. So the network is loaded, and be sure and listen to all of the content. It's all great. It's all, the best stuff that's out there. Keith, what's your final word on everything? Get us out of here with something.
Whether you thought it was a good decision or a bad decision, just be happy we saw a great fight either way.
There you go. And there's a lot coming up. So, we got the Adesanya Romero fight coming up. There's a lot of fights that are in the
works.
In the not too distant future. What is it, 8 weekends in a row? They got fights out, I think I heard.
Yeah.
And also, listen, props to
11 out of 12. I think it's 11 out of 12, too.
One more shout out. Aaron Bronstetter. He's been getting a lot of props on Twitter. I want to give him props for this. One thing that I'm going to use as content for the next episode of Early Stoppage is he interviewed Dana and nailed him down on about 4 fights that are kind of rumored. And this is why I'm going to give Aaron props. He did it in order of most likely to least likely, even though it wasn't timeline-wise, the way to do it. And what that did, I believe, was it disarmed Dana. Dana was like, yeah, sure, we'll commit to the Usman-Masvidal fight. And then as Aaron kept asking him questions, he had already established that he was willing to talk about fights being booked. So good job, Aaron Bronson.
He should have asked about Stipe and DC, though.
Yeah, he missed that one. That's true.
But Aaron, fantastic. My favorite moment of the entire weekend from Aaron is pronouncing the full Israel Adesanya name. Good job, man.
Props to him for that. And the last piece of Aaron Bronstetter news, which is now the Aaron Bronstetter recap show, Davidson asked him in Houston if he was ever going to be on Between the Links again. He said he has retired. So we'll see about that. But if you're going to go out like Strahan, go out like Peyton Manning, go out like,
That's right. Like Tom Brady will next year. Like Tom Brady will next year.
He's never going to top that Nick Diaz moment.
No.
All right, guys. There you have it. That's it. That's all. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.